It's Temple Tuesday. I'm Joey, and I'm, here outside of the Community of Christ Temple in Independence, Missouri, but more specifically in front of the Stone Church, the very first branch of the reorganization here in Independence. And today we're going to continue our journey towards peace through the sacraments. And can you think of a sacrament that goes well with a church building? Let me give you a hint. Go into the chapel of love. You guessed it. The sacrament of marriage. Now, in Community of Christ, we actually don't perform any weddings in the temple itself. This would happen at various locations throughout the world, and it might happen in a Community of Christ church or the church of another denomination or even another faith movement. Often a location is chosen that gets transformed into this sacred and holy space for that sacrament. It can often even be out in the beauty of nature somewhere. Now, when we look at the sacrament of marriage through the lens of peace, we are invited to reconsider the words that we use and speak to one another, and to practice the practice of nonviolent, peaceful communication in all of our interactions with people, but most specifically in our most intimate relationships. In the book of John, John describes Jesus as the Logos, the Word, the message, the ultimate communication of God with God's people, inviting us into a covenant of peace with God, with all of humanity, and with all things that are created. Now, we all know too well that words that we use can be used to create strife, discord, division. Words that we use can be used to denigrate others or to discriminate against others. But in the vows that are spoken in the sacrament of marriage, we are invited, all of us, into an alternative vision of the words that we use and why we use them, to build relationships of trust, care, and relationships that are life-giving. And these vows that are spoken build bridges and tear down the dividing walls. It's a space where two become one flesh. And when we think of how the sacrament of marriage can show the unification of all humanity, how often it goes past the dividing lines that we draw about nations and ethnicities, race, sexualities, social class, religious identities, and reminds us that we are all part of the same human family. It's partly why Community of Christ proudly and joyfully offers the sacrament of marriage to same-sex couples. It's that these former dividing walls for the LGBT plus community no longer have a place in the kingdom of God. And there's these words that are spoken in the sacrament of marriage that are just beautiful. Do you both mutually agree? Relationships rooted in mutuality and equality embody the peace of Jesus Christ. They lift up the importance of common consent in all of our decision-making processes. The importance of listening to one another at a world conference when someone is speaking, or even in our own congregational business meetings, to uplift the voice and opinion that each person has. This really speaks to the idea of unity in diversity and the worth of all persons, two principles that are at the heart of the sacrament of marriage. You might think of it as that moment where you throw a rock into a lake and the water begins to ripple out. If we can use nonviolent, peaceful communication, mutuality and equality in all of our most intimate relationships, imagine the effect and impact that we'll have as it spreads out to our families, to our communities, to our nations, and even into our world. So here is your challenge today. I want you to think about a couple that has entered into an agreement of mutuality and equality that uses nonviolent, peaceful ways to communicate. And write in the comments what type of fruits come from that relationship. They don't even have to be married. What type of fruits come from a relationship of two people you know who live out the practice of nonviolent communication, mutuality, and equality? And we'll see you next week.